In the early 1800s, a gentleman by the name of John Bell relocated with his family from North Carolina to Red River, Tennessee. He bought some land and a spacious house to accommodate his expanding family, eventually acquiring additional land over the years, totaling 328 acres. Throughout this period, Bell was not solely occupied with his family and the local church community. He was also diligently engaged in clearing fields to render them suitable for crop cultivation. In the year 1817, while inspecting one of his cornfields, John Bell came across an unusual creature seated in the middle of a corn row. As he approached, he suddenly halted in his tracks. The creature before him was like none he had ever seen, possessing the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit. Despite firing multiple shots at the creature, it appeared to vanish. Though unsettled by the encounter, John chose to dismiss the incident. He proceeded with his day, and later he and his family gathered for dinner. Shortly after, they prepared for bed. As the family settled down to sleep, they were jolted awake by loud banging sounds against the exterior walls of their log house. Armed with a gun, John Bell rushed outside to investigate the source of the noise, only to find nothing visible. Indeed, things were eerily quiet, almost silent surrounding the cabin. Struggling to regain his composure, John comforted his family, and they attempted to resume their sleep. Nevertheless, this would not be the final night of disturbance for the Bells. The enigmatic sounds resurfaced the following night, just as the family was settling in to sleep. John, along with his sons now, hurried outside to apprehend whoever or whatever was causing the disturbance. Yet once more, they failed to find anything. In the ensuing weeks, the Bell children started waking up, distressed. They reported to their parents that rats were gnawing at their bedposts and shaking their beds. Before long, the children also voiced concerns that their bed covers were being pulled away from them, and their pillows were hurled across the room by an unseen force. Over time, the Bells started hearing faint, whispering voices that, too indistinct to comprehend, resembled a frail old woman singing hymns. The incidents took a more disturbing turn when the youngest daughter, Betsy Bell, began enduring brutal mistreatment at the hands of an invisible entity. The entity would tug at her hair and deliver relentless slaps, frequently resulting in welts and handprints on her face and body. The disturbances, initially kept a secret by John Bell, eventually reached a point where he chose to confide in his closest friend and neighbor, James Johnston. Johnston and his wife stayed overnight at the Bell home. They too encountered the same harrowing events that the Bells had undergone. Having their bed covers pulled away and enduring repeated slaps, Johnston leaped out of bed and shouted, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?" There was no response. What began as a whisper gradually intensified to the extent that it became loud and unmistakable. The voice sang hymns, quoted scripture, and even engaged in intelligent conversations. This included, remarkably, quoting word for word, 2 sermons that were preached simultaneously on the same day. Word of these supernatural occurrences quickly extended beyond the settlement, reaching as far as Nashville, where Major General Andrew Jackson took a keen interest. John Bell and his elder sons had fought alongside General Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans. In 1819, Jackson resolved to visit the Bell farm to witness the events firsthand. As he neared the Bell farm with a group of men, well-tended horses, and a wagon, the wagon unexpectedly halted, and the horses were unable to move it. After several minutes of swearing and attempting to coax the horses into pulling the wagon, Jackson exclaimed, "By the eternal boys, that must be the Bell Witch." This statement was preceded by a disembodied female voice, informing Jackson that he could proceed, and she would encounter him again later that evening. Subsequently, the wagon became movable again. Jackson and his entourage then proceeded to the Bell home, where Jackson engaged in an extensive conversation covering various topics, including the paranormal occurrences. One of the men in Jackson's group claimed to be a witch tamer. He declared this while wielding a small, shiny pistol loaded with a single silver bullet, asserting that the entity refrained from causing trouble due to its fear of him. Mere moments after the man uttered this statement, he began to convulse violently, his body contorting in various directions. He was then forcibly ejected through the front door, accompanied by a loud female voice cursing him as a charlatan. Now filled with terror, Jackson's men pleaded to depart from the Bell farm, But Jackson himself insisted on staying to determine the authenticity of the phenomenon. The men, including Jackson, spent the night. The events of that night remain unclear, but the group left very early the next morning and returned to Nashville. Though not officially documented, Jackson would later express that he would rather face the British in New Orleans than have to contend with the Bell Witch. The supernatural occurrences persisted, haunting the family for years. Notably, it played a significant role in causing Betsy Bell, the eldest daughter, to break off her engagement, among other notable interactions. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell slipped into a coma and drew his last breath. The next day, the family discovered a small vial of unidentified liquid in the cupboard. John Bell Jr. administered some of it to one of the family's cats, which perished within seconds. The entity then spoke up, saying, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, and it fixed him up." John Bell Jr. then tossed the vial into the fireplace, where it ignited into a bright bluish flame. John Bell was formally laid to rest just days later. However, the visitations did not come to an end. In April of 1821, the entity paid a visit to John Bell's widow, Lucy, informing her that it would return every 7 years. True to its word, 7 years later to the day, it returned for the first time, visiting with John Bell Jr. The entity engaged in discussions covering a wide array of topics, including the origin of life, civilization, and more. It was even said to predict events such as the Civil War and both World Wars, among others. This marked the final time the entity made its presence known, promising to return in 107 years to visit the most direct descendant of John Bell. The year was 1935, and the closest living relative was Dr. Charles Bailey Bell. While Charles did write a book about the Bell Witch, he never documented any such visitation, and never would. The entity that tormented the Bell family and the Red River settlement over 200 years ago is often held responsible for strange and unexplainable occurrences near the old Bell farm today. Reports include faint sounds of people talking, children playing, and even an old woman whispering. Ghostly figures and the sight of lit candles in an empty field, where the settlement once stood, have also been observed. The entity originally housed the witch that afflicted the Bells. Apparitions of a ghostly woman have been witnessed over the years since John Bell's passing. Given that no living witnesses of the Bell Witch apparition remain today, the exact events on that expansive tract of land may never be known for certain. Nevertheless, the pages of history continue to murmur the chilling tale, and the legend endures. What are your thoughts? Was the Bell Witch a real entity? Do the various handwritten accounts, including that of future President Andrew Jackson, lend credence to the idea that something unusual occurred there? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it on social media. Until next time, this is Fadri from Fadri Stories. Thank you for watching, and have a fantastic day.